Is a McGregor-Crawford matchup one you'd be interested in seeing?
Okay, so this is really rich, Chael, because, I mean, do you remember not that long ago when Conor was going after Floyd, when that fight was made, in the build of that fight? Bob Arum, much like Oscar De La Hoya, was one of the loudest detractors of this idea, said that the fight made no sense, said that, we shouldn't be paying for this fight, said that Floyd at 49-0 at the time shouldn't be fighting a guy who's 0-0, and now he's offering up Terence Crawford, arguably the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. It's either him or Lomachenko in boxing right now. You're offering him up against Conor. Now, I like the idea, by the way, of the two-part series, if you will. I like the idea of the MMA fight and then the boxing fight, or the boxing fight and the MMA fight. Not that long ago, I suggested that PFL should try to make this happen with Kayla Harrison and Clarissa Shields. But for someone who 2 years ago was saying that it was laughable that Conor McGregor would be fighting a boxing great, and now he's 0-1 as a boxer, and you're going to offer up arguably your best fighter to fight him, it seems a little disingenuous. It seems a little hypocritical. Now, you could change your tune. You're at every right, like you could do that in life. That's fine. But of all people, Bob Arum, who is one of the loudest detractors of the Conor McGregor boxing experiment to do this, it's kind of funny. And I will also just add, just to answer the question, I have no interest in this fight because I want to see Conor compete at what he's best at, which is MMA, and I want to see Terence Crawford compete at what he's best at, and that's boxing.
All right, and Ariel, everything that you said is true, and I think that it is a little rich that Arum did it, but Audiatar, Conor's manager, came out and spoke on that same thing. He had a little different opinion. He just said, look, it just appears that Bob Arum is now a believer. Even if he was late to the table, he's still here. So let's talk. And by the way, the question specifically is, are you interested? I got to tell you, I really am. Terence Crawford, I mean, the X's and O's of this aren't just quite as simple. Conor likes to stand up when he fights. Okay, doing a stand-up fight with Terence Crawford doesn't seem like the world's greatest idea. Terence also has a wrestling background. Conor McGregor can wrestle very well, trains it every day, but he does not have a wrestling background. So if we're just left on paper, we're just left to discuss it, these guys are going to go out, do an MMA fight under MMA unified rules. But if we can also agree that this is largely going to be a stand-up fight, I think it does get pretty interesting pretty fast, and I will give a little credit to Bob Arum for saying he wanted to do a two-fight deal. He wanted one MMA fight, one boxing fight, but he was willing to put MMA first, because we always see the boxing guys come in and try to do this, but you never actually get to the MMA. Even when they try, you've heard these ridiculous ideas where we're going to do it all in the same night. One round is MMA and the next round is boxing, but then when it's time to actually do the deal, the boxing round comes first and MMA is later. You never actually get to it. So I think that Arum offering this and saying they would come to the UFC first, I'm interested.
It does feel like progress. I will give you that. It feels like progress in this debate of the MMA fighter boxing or the boxer going to MMA. To do a two-fight deal is something a little different, and it does pique my interest a little more. Here's the other angle that people aren't really talking about. Dana White despises Bob Arum, and Bob Arum despises Dana White, to put it mildly,
Yes.
right? Could those two actually sit at a table and do business? Now, I know Dana White has a very good relationship with Bob's son-in-law, Todd DeBoeuf, over at Top Rank, so maybe he would get involved. But that's a real thing, right? Like that's a big hurdle in this proposal, no?
Oh, yeah, Dana White called him, and this was 2 years ago, and I still remember it, a crusty old, you'll have to look up how we finished that. But the point is, yeah, these guys aren't going to get along, and I think that Bob is pretty used to being the alpha male, particularly when it comes to fighting, and there's a new sheriff in town, so they're going to have to figure that out. I think Bob Arum's going to have to come in with his hat in his hand a little bit more if he's going to do a deal with Dana White. I think he's starting to learn and realize that, but I think that Bob brings something to the table here. I think that Terence Crawford is a real guy with real skills that's got a real fan base. I mean, there's something interesting there. Look, Aaron, I'm not bullish on the fight that this is going to happen. That's not at all my message here. But you and I talking as two guys, I think it's a little fun. And I think if we hear more about Terence's wrestling background, I'll be more interested in it. I only heard that because people have said it. I'm a longtime wrestler. It's a small community. I've never seen this guy at a tournament. I've never seen this guy in a practice room. They're claiming that he has a wrestling background. But if he's got the courage to step into the octagon with Conor McGregor, I'm going to take him at his word.
Yeah, and I wonder if Terence is a big enough name, right? Like, I know he's a big name in the world of boxing. I don't know if he's, a name like Floyd. I think it's very fair to say that he's not a name like Floyd, but Conor is, up there with Floyd as far as some of the, the most famous athletes in the world. I don't know if Terence is out there. So, like, right now, would you say who's a more popular person in the sports world, Terence Crawford or, say, Jorge Masvidal or say Khabib Nurmagomedov. Like, the whole point of doing this is to try to up your stock, right? But I would argue that Khabib and Jorge are actually bigger names right now in the sports world than Terence Crawford. Am I crazy?
No, you're correct on that. I think you make a very fair point. There would be some work that had to be done. Look, when you drop Floyd and Conor in somebody's lap, the job is kind of done. With Terence, it's going to take a little bit of work and a little bit of storytelling.
Yeah, and he's not much of a showman. He doesn't sell himself, so I don't know. I don't think it happens, but the two-fight thing is kind of interesting.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app, and for live streaming and special content, subscribe to ESPN+.